Here I am, climbing up, feeling great, getting love. Here I go, risk it all, be worth it now, and that's for sure. Watch me as a Rocketeer.
Alright, welcome everyone to Fight Talk Down Under, episode 18. My name's Dan Meehan, I'm from Fight News Australia, for those who don't know, and my co-host, of course, is Lockjaw Justin Van Heerden. How are you, mate?
Yeah, doing good. We're here again. We're it's like fast becoming like one of my favorite times in the week, if not my favorite time in the week. We just sit down, we talk about some fights. Occasionally, someone gets sprayed. There's some banter, and sometimes we even make predictions and they're wrong. So it's got it all. It's got everything.
Yeah. Shocking. Look, it's rare, but occasionally our predictions are wrong. It's not so rare when someone gets sprayed, though. That there's at least one every week. So, looking forward to finding out who this week's lucky receiver is. Yeah,
no, we'll see. We'll see how the episode pans out, and then if it comes up. Last week we had to wait till the very end. I had a couple people that were like maybe halfway through the episode, and they were like, "Man, you haven't like sprayed anyone yet." And then they got to the end, and they were like, "Okay, there it is."
Absolutely, and there's a couple of old candidates, on the run sheet this week. So we'll see how that goes. But everyone, listen to the end, and we'll see who Lockjaw's got up his sleeve. I'm sure there's someone that's got him sort of bubbling under the surface there. But before we get to all that, we've got a fair bit to get through. We'll be covering 158 from the weekend. There's a few Aussies on the card there. We'll get stuck into Cambosis versus Haney. We'll have a look at Sky Nicholson's performance from the weekend as well, and we'll do a preview of UFC 275, which has got 4 Australians, I think, on the card. Or was it 5? Yeah, four on the card. So plenty of Australian representation there. So I've got a fair bit to unpack, but. Before we do, we'll start with 158, which is a bit of a handful to say, but I see what they're doing there. Once it gets into the sort of 200s, it'll sort of make a bit more sense. It'd be 1258 or whatever. But this weekend just gone, we had Duke Didier was making his one debut after, obviously, like we covered off last week. He he had a bit of time off. Was told he'd never fight again due to a blood clotting condition in his legs. Managed to overcome that and find his way to one championship, but unfortunately his debut was spoiled by Jasur Mirzamuhamedov, who has beaten him by split decision. And Duke, he sort of he stuck to the game plan. We know Mirzamuhamedov is sort of has a Muay Thai background, so and Duke is sort of more of the grappler sort of style. So he stuck to the game plan. He took him down, but he just wasn't able to really advance his position and do too much damage. And the one championship fights are judged in their entirety and not on rounds. So Duke he took a bit of damage towards the end there when he was struggling to take his opponent down, and he ended up losing. He ended up sort of tiring towards the end, and losing on split decision. So what did you make of Duke Didier's performance?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it there. It was just seemed like a couple of factors, like obviously fatigue kind of played a factor towards the end, but that is something that makes it pretty hard, that like you got to think about in the back of your mind that they judge it as like a whole contest. So you got to factor that into your performance and factor into your game plan and your strategy, that okay, maybe I'm pursuing this one line, I'm not really getting to the point where I need to be, I'm not hitting the mark, I got to try and switch it up. But it's a feeling out process for him. It was his debut in the organization. So, I'm sure there's a bunch of factors that were coming into play for the first time, like obviously with having to be like do the hydration testing, that affect changing up your weight cut, having to sort of do all that sort of stuff, the process of flying, overseas, getting used to that again, just all that sort of stuff. He's been out for a while, that had all sort of come rushing back. So, obviously he didn't get the result, but he lost a split decision, but maybe sort of a blessing in a sense, because he probably didn't take too much damage. He's felt out the experience now. He can kind of base everything on that experience now and then sort of move forward in a positive way, hopefully. So, I feel like, it sucks because I really wanted to see him win, but at the same time, it's probably going to benefit him now moving forward, because he can just apply it and take that sort of learning curve again, and then just sort of hopefully have success as a result of this shitty experience and this little hiccup that he's found now.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said earlier, he's had a bit of time off aside from a fight earlier this year. So maybe he's sort of getting that cardio back as well. He sort of he was very tired towards the end of the fight. So that's obviously something that can come back to you. But towards the end of the fight, he took some knees that would probably be illegal in other organisations. Obviously, in one championship, the soccer kicks and the knees to a grounded opponent are all fair game. So is that something that would be like? Is that something that you can prepare for? Would that have been a bit of a shock to the system for Duke at the time?
Yeah, 100%. It's not really like it's like when you sort of make your pro debut in MMA and you cop those first elbows in a fight. You can try and drill it in training and try and sort of emulate it a little bit, but until you get like a full force elbow to the face, you have no idea what the heck you're in for. It's the same with those knees. Like, you're probably trying to train for it and kind of show it in training, but you're not going to get full blasted in the head with a knee while you're in training camp because you might not make it to your fucking training camp. So 100% that would have been like eye-opening and a factor that played in as well, and you would have just experienced that and gone, holy shit, like I don't even know if I want to be here now. But that's something that sort of gets added to the list, gets put aside, and is something that he can focus on moving forward. You're going to be like, okay, I got to be more careful in these positions. I got to address these things a bit quicker because these are devastating techniques that can be used and can ultimately end the fight or hurt me or damage me, or because even if you don't get knocked out with like a knee or a soccer kick or whatever, the chances of you getting like your orbital broken or your jaw broken or your cheek broken or something like that is probably like a lot higher than just getting punched in the face. So that's something that you got to sort of factor in now, and that's something that he's almost like with fighting in one championship as opposed to other organizations. You kind of have to be in a different mindset because you have to think about those things because they do it in such a different way and they allow those things to happen. So being that he is sort of a grappling sort of style, and that it might even be beneficial to him now that he's experienced that to even go, okay, well, if I get on top of someone in any position and I can't really pass or I can't really progress the position to where I want to, for my money, I might need to start using those sort of techniques, kneeing people in the head, waiting for the referee to call open so he can kick these, throw some of these soccer kicks and stuff like that. And then that's going to just be another weapon that you can add to your arsenal. I think about that a lot, like when I'm sort of in training and in certain positions, because obviously I watch a lot of the fights in one championship, and I sort of think about these positions and I'm like, man, right now, like if I was allowed to, like if I was fighting somewhere where I could do that, like I'll just be able to kill someone. Like it'd just be rough. So, if you're going to, I think, from the moment you sort of know that you're going to fight in that rule set where that's going to be possible, you sort of have to start going, okay, let's work that. Let's make it as realistic as possible. Maybe get your training partner to wear some headgear and some other sort of extra padding and stuff like that, so you can try and make it as realistic as possible without obviously hurting someone.
Yeah, definitely, and it seemed to be quite a short turnaround from him signing to actually then going into the cage. I don't know how much sort of notice he had before he signed with one championship, but maybe he didn't have the time to really properly prepare for it. But I'm sure he'll be better for the run. But the other thing that was on my mind watching Duke Didier on the weekend was his opponent was quite a big boy, but Duke doesn't look that huge for heavyweight to me. I don't know. I don't know what you thought about it, but do you reckon he could make light heavyweight? He didn't look that big for heavyweight for me.
I don't know, because like I've stood next to him and he just seems massive, and like you look at if you just look at like some of the comparisons, like in the stuff that they were putting up in the lead up in Fight Week, you see him next to someone like Jimmy Crute, and he just towers over him. And like Jimmy's a big guy, so like maybe he could potentially, maybe he's like height wise, I think he's good for the weight class. Maybe body size wise, body type wise, potentially, yeah, maybe he's just holding on to a bit of extra weight he doesn't need to, and he could potentially go down to light heavyweight and be an absolute gun. Like it's a weird one because I don't know. I've stood next to the guy and he just seems like a massive. He seems so massive. So I'm like, maybe part of me is like, yeah, he could slot into heavyweight perfectly and just keep himself there moving forward. But it's always going to be more advantageous if you can drop down a weight class and fight. Cut that extra bit of weight and fight down in weight and be bigger in a weight class as opposed to sort of below average or an average size in the next weight class up, or just flat out too small.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, look. Either way, it's a it's a learning experience for Duke Dieter, and I'm sure he'll be better off next time out. But another guy who was probably outgunned size wise was Simon Carson. He took on Marcus Buchecha Almeida, who. He obviously made pretty short work of him in the end. There was definitely a size discrepancy and between the two, and Buchecha he took Carson down and just ended up just raining down on fists until with fists until the referee pulled him off. So, Carson has sort of mentioned post fight that. He actually had to sort of eat up to make the minimum weight for heavyweight. So he was a bit undersized. But he sort of mentioned that he's signed a 6-fight deal with one championship, but he's not sure if they actually wanted to fight that out or whether they were just trying to lure him to fight Buchecha, because I think they've been having trouble getting matchups for Buchecha. So what did you make of that one?
Yeah, it was always going to be a tough task fighting someone like Buchecha because, for my money, the dude's probably taking some extra supplements as well.
He does look well nourished, yeah.
And he's a massive dude, and he's obviously like one of the best grapplers on planet Earth too. So, you've got to factor that in, that if you're going to have someone like that on top of you, it's probably going to be a shit time. And with Carson, obviously it's like it's shit that, he didn't get to have any success. You want to see the Aussies do well, but like, if you're having to eat up to sort of make heavyweight, and I think he's in his like mid 40s too. So, he's not really he's probably doesn't want to have to cut weight at all. I can't imagine it'd be fun for him to cut any sort of weight. So it's probably, in that sense, it makes sense why he was trying to do that and just fight at heavyweight. And, even fighting a light heavyweight for him might be like a bit of a sort of tough task or a big ask, to cut that extra bit of weight. So yeah, I guess that's something we'll have to see and see if that's something that's going to play out, if he's going to fight in one championship again or how that's going to work. But, that makes sense to me that they offer you a multi-fight deal to take a fight with Buchecha, because he's obviously such a monster, and, it's a tough task to sort of get in there and fight a guy like that, even if, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, say he isn't taking anything he shouldn't be taking, and he's all natural. At the end of the day, he is one of the best grapplers on planet Earth, and like, if he gets a hold of you, you're pretty well fucked. Like, so yeah, that's how it panned out. So it's a shit kind of draw for Simon and a shit way for it to pan out. But I mean, as Max Holloway would say, it is what it is. You just kind of got to roll with it now and see what's next.
Yeah, look, hopefully he gets another fight for one championship, and he'll be able to put in a better showing than what he gave, because he was really up against it going into that fight. It was it was always going to have to be a huge boil over for him to win. So fair play to him for taking it, because from what I'm told, there's a lot of people that have said no to that fight. So he's got some big balls for taking that one on.
Oh, 100%, man. That's even just stepping in there and fighting someone like Buchecha is just that's some stones right there to get in there and compete with someone like that.
Absolutely, and also on the card was Reece McLaren taking on Shi Wei. It ended up being a bit of a barn burner for the the time that it was for as long as it lasted, and Reece got dropped pretty hard early on. He was sort of trying to try out some of the new striking that he's got with from training with John Wayne Parr, and it kind of looked alright. He's got some speed, but got dropped pretty badly, and went back to what he knew, and once it went to the mat, then it was pretty clear that there was a discrepancy in the grappling skills, and Reece has closed the show with a submission. So what did you make of his performance?
Well, it comes back to sort of what I've spoken about a few times. Like, why even give the guy the opportunity in his area that he's going to have the most success? Like, why even put yourself there? You want to show out that you're doing some striking training with John Wayne Parr, and you want to like showcase what your abilities are, but you got to pick your spots. Like, there's fights you're going to be able to do that, and there's other fights where maybe you should just stick to like what got you to the dance and kind of just rely on that. Like, obviously there was a big discrepancy in the grappling, like as we saw once Reece got a hold of him and kind of utilized his grappling ability. It was a pretty easy work for him. It was like sort of light work, and ended up getting the submission. So I guess that's sort of a learning curve for him moving forward, because say he goes on a bit of a run now and fights like the champ, you know, you can't be doing that shit with him. You can't be trying to like stand in front of him and make it a striking battle. You just don't need to. You got to try and utilize your strength. There's fights. You got to pick your fights. Like there's fights where you're going to be able to do that, and there's other fights where you kind of just need to go to where your strength is and just take everything else off the table. And you see that a bunch like from the top level all the way down, where you know someone might have a distinct, clear path to victory, but then you know for their ego they're like, oh no, well I want to showcase that I'm well rounded or that I can hang in this area too. And sometimes it works out, yeah, but sometimes you know the desired result that you want just doesn't happen because there is such a big discrepancy in the skill. Like you know, that's a good example because obviously Reese got dropped, but then adjusted and he went to what he knew and didn't try and like continue on that one path. But you see it all the time, man. People just they're so set on doing this one thing that it doesn't go their way, but then they don't change and adjust and they just keep going. And you know, Reese isn't like just like new to this sport or to fighting in one. Like the dude's been around the block now. He should be, you know, he's pretty experienced. He should, you know, have the fight IQ from the start to be like, oh, like pretty early on he copped a couple of shots before he even got dropped. You know, there's a few shots that landed and you could kind of go, hey man, maybe I should like stay all the way out, wait for this guy to press me and then take him down, or get all the way in and take him down, or just at least clinch up with him or do something. But yeah, you know, obviously he got the result. Good on him. Hopefully he can go on a bit of a run, and there's some tough matchups for him moving forward. And you know, like there's some absolute killers in that weight for him, you know, in the top three. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, and you know, like coming up against a banger like Shi Wei, you know that guy's dangerous standing up. He's got some pretty cool knockouts on his record. So Reese has sort of taken some unnecessary damage there, hasn't he? And going into the fight, he was ranked number 5 in the division. So it could have been really costly, a loss there, because you've got Adriano Moraes is the champion. He's rematching Mighty Mouse later this year, as they announced on the weekend. So you want to be in the winner's circle in that division, because either way, if you're in the top 5 and you're on a winning streak, you know Adriano Moraes is there. You know the champion's there. You know, if he beats Mighty Mouse again, then you know there's potentially a Mighty Mouse fight there for someone like that who's ranked around that sort of 4 or 5 mark. So it could have cost him. It really could have cost him. You know, if he had lost this fight. So yeah, it seemed an interesting decision to sort of stand up with Shi Wei, but you know, it worked out in the end. He got it done.
Yeah, no, it panned out well for him. So hopefully, you know, he applies some sort of, I guess, learning curves that he's experienced in that fight. But you know, I think it's happened a couple times for Reese in some of these fights where, you know, that's happened, and at some point you got to make an adjustment and be like, oh, maybe I don't want to be doing things the way I am. Maybe I should just, you know, pick my spots a bit better and sort of look at what's ahead of me and just play with what's in front of me.
Absolutely, and yeah. Also on the weekend, we had a huge event down here in Melbourne. It was a big event for Aussie boxing. Devin Haney versus George Kambosos Jr., which was it was for all the chocolates, really. For the unified world title. So Devin Haney has obviously won the fight by unanimous decision, and it was it was a pretty clear cut decision in the end. So I guess for my money, it kind of looked like Cambosis sort of tried to box Haney from the outside, which probably seemed like not a great strategy in the end. You know, like Haney's obviously got that sort of Mayweather style, that slick style, you know, sort of stick and move. And he's incredibly hard to hit, as Cambosos found out. He was kind of jumping at shadows a few times throughout the fight. So what did you make of the fight?
Yeah, it was probably not the strategy to use to fight someone like Haney. And then, as we saw, like especially when early on, the jabs that Haney was throwing were maybe just touching, but like as the fight went on, they started like really landing, and he started finding a heaps of success. And it comes back to sort of the fact like Cambosis would try and go in, he'd get jabbed in the face, he'd go all the way out of range, and then he'd try and go back in and he'd get jabbed in the face again. And like, there's some, or he would like try and throw the big right hand, big overhands, but wouldn't look to maybe fake that or even try and sell that right hand to try and land some follow-up shots or do something a bit different. Yeah, so it was probably not a good strategy, but something I noticed too, like as the rounds went on, when we got to like the 4th and 5th round and started like going, as it sort of carried on. The corner work from Cambosis' team was like a bit strange too. Like they were like, oh, you're doing good. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep going. We're here. We're in it. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. And I don't know if that's the message that you want to be sending someone when clearly what they're doing is not working. Like, he was getting outboxed. He's getting his face jabbed off. And when he did get in close and like maybe, he did sort of get past the jab or whatever it sort of was, Haney would grab a hold of him and just reset and then go again. And like, and people would probably, I guess I saw a bunch of people were like saying, being real whingy, a la if like Mayweather was fighting, they're whinging about the approach and being like, oh, well, it's boring or what, like, they're just not happy with it. But that's just kind of shit that wins you world titles. And in this case, it won you all of the belts. All of them now, like Haney's the man now. So, I think, yeah, if they have a rematch, Cambosis have to switch things up like a fair bit, because if you try and like fight from the outside and someone's jabs a laser beam like that, you're just gonna have a shit time like all round. I mean, in a sport where you have two weapons and someone can like, outbox you that much using just one weapon, it's like, fuck, man, that should let you know that like what you're doing is not working.
Yeah, I mean, you talked earlier about, sort of remembering what got you to the dance, right? And it felt like Cambosis maybe got away from that a little bit. He sort of, he tried to kind of beat Haney at his own game and, like you say, he sort of had trouble bypassing the jab and sort of getting himself inside and staying inside. And, normally that sort of pressure style is what has got him this far. So, it felt like he kind of got away from it a little bit.
Yeah. How did you go from walking down someone like Lopez after being dropped by him and then just, piecing him up and, you did enough to sort of win a decision in that sense, but you kind of threw yourself into the fire. And then you go against someone like Haney who, like, I'm sure he hits hard, but I get like, for my money, I don't think he hits as hard as Lopez. So, it might have deserved you to do the same thing, to walk him down and try and just put that pressure on him and throw yourself in there and just get after it a bit more. But, I'm not a boxer by any means, but at some point you've got to just go, you know what, fuck it, this isn't working. Like, if you're 6 rounds into a fight and what you've been doing isn't working, at that point, fuck, man, you might have to have your corner be like, all right, this isn't working, let's just go balls to the wall. Like, we're already down 5 rounds, getting our face jabbed off. Let's make it a scrap. Let's push forward. Let's get inside. Let's go hard, and let's try and like really put hands on this guy. You're already getting jabbed in the face. You might as well get jabbed in the face and actually try and like make it dirty and actually try and like knock the dude the fuck out or something. But I don't know. It's weird, and it's hard too, because you do get in sort of sometimes in a fight, you do get in that sort of mindset where it's a one-track mindset and you just kind of stick to the same thing. I mean, that happens. It's going to happen across the board. It happens to amateurs and it happens to some of the best in the world. You see it all the time. They just kind of get stuck on that one path, and if you don't have the people there with you that are like going to pull you out of that and give you the adjustments to make, or give you those realistic sort of answers, or in the corner or during the fight, then it's not going to change.
Yeah, exactly. And one other fight on the card that I wanted to just quickly touch on. Did you see Lucas Brown's knockout over Junior Farr on the undercard? That was it was a violent knockout, but it was just a huge boil over in the end, because Junior Farr's obviously just coming off a fight with Joseph Parker. Like, he's a world rated heavyweight. Lucas Brown, we know, is a former world champion, but now 43 years old. He's sort of he's alternating wins and losses. He just had a good win over Django Apello recently, but he's gone and starched Junior Farr in the first round, and it was it was a horrible stoppage from horrible non-stoppage really from the referee really on the first knockdown. But so Junior Farr probably took a shot that he probably didn't need to at the end there. But Lucas Brown just showed once again the last thing that ever leaves a fighter is his power. So what did you make of Lucas's performance and his chance of sort of getting another big payday?
Oh man, this probably helps him towards that, to being able to do that. But yeah, that knockout was a bit rough, man. And Almeida was like twitching afterwards and having like a seizure and stuff like that. So it was it was rough. Fucking yeah, I don't know what the ref was doing in that fight, but that just shows you, like, even though someone's like, as old as Lucas is, and like that. Yeah, that's true. In a sport where you're using your hands and that's sort of your bread and butter and your weapons, and you are sort of doing that. You know, maybe Lucas for this fight, he had that Rocky Balboa approach. He's out here just hitting frozen meat and just working on just being able to hit hard and just working the power and not working speed, not working anything else. Just wanted to break bones with his punches because it obviously paid off. Like,
yeah, I don't know that that would really be a departure from what he's done throughout his career. Like, you know, we know that Lucas Brown, you know, he's obviously been successful in boxing, but, you know, the actual sort of pure boxing skills are probably aren't quite on the level of some of the other guys sort of, you know, in the same kind of grouping in the rankings. But it's just that power that's got him through, you know. He's just, he's got that touch of death, and he showed it again on the weekend.
yeah, no, it was brutal to watch. I mean, and, you know, you never want to see that. You don't want to see someone take unnecessary extra damage. And that's exactly what happened there. So, yeah, no, hopefully we don't see more of that, but I guarantee you we will.
Yeah, it's one of those things that never really quite changes, and I guess it's a game of inches at the end of the day. You know, you get these different decisions on the day, but you know, hopefully Junior Far's okay, and hopefully you know, he didn't take too much more punishment there. But you know, also on the weekend, another one we wanted to touch on was Skye Nicholson had their fourth fight in 91 days, I think she said. She's now 4-0. She's beaten a former world champion. And what was her name? Gabriella Bouvier. It wasn't really much of a spectacle, the fight itself, let's be honest. But you know, Skye's beaten a former world champion, even though she, you know, her opponent looked a little bit sluggish, but you know, she sort of chipped away at her. She's got a bit of a funny sort of style. She sort of, you know, fights with her hands down and her chin up, but you know, just her movement was better and her hands were faster in the end. So yeah, did you see Skye's fight, and what did you make of it?
Yeah, no, I'm obviously not surprised at the result by any means, and I don't think, you know, her team are going to put her into any non-winnable fights at the moment while she's still in early days in her pro career. But yeah, I don't know. It was a weird fight. Like, I kind of expected a bit more, and I really thought that she was going to be able to put her away completely. But yeah, it is kind of weird, like how the fight sort of panned out, and then. She does have like you sort of touched on, she does have like a really weird style, like, and moving forward, it's, you know, it gives someone sort of, now that she's pro and she's had these quick fights in such quick succession, you know, if you're sort of getting matched a fighter, you have plenty of content to sort of utilize and develop a game plan with, because she's fighting so often, she's not going to make these other leaps and changes to her game because she's just fighting. Like, she's not really even, I mean, is she really even in a camp? No, like, her camp is just the fight that she had a couple weeks ago or like a month ago or whatever the go is. So if I was, you know, if I was on a team with someone and they were scheduled to fight her, I'd be like just going hard into, okay, well, here's what we know. We know that when she's not just randomly going to come into this fight and be vastly different or have like change their game significantly. So let's utilize that and let's work a game plan that's going to beat her. And, you know, for her with her hands down like that, chin up, it's, you know, you could fight behind a good jab, just make it all about the jab. Just no matter what happens, just you got to be better with the jab. And then when she does start reacting to the jab or wanting to sort of counter off that or step off or, you know, push the pace a bit more because she's just getting her face jabbed off because her chin is just up in the air, that's when those big shots, those looping shots can start landing, those hooks, those overhands, shit like that, you know? So it's something that her and her team are probably going to have to sort of look at. It's something that her opponents, if they're, you know, worth their money to have their coaches around and that, are going to be looking at, hopefully, and sort of make a plan for. But like I said, I don't think Eddie Hearn and that are going to put her into any fights that are going to not be winnable or even like too much of a step up anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly, and like you said, you know, it was something that her opponent lacked. There was just sort of like a jab or something just to get her attention. You know, break her momentum coming forward. She just kind of let her just pot shot from the outside. So, yeah, the opponent was a bit disappointing in the end. But yeah, like you say, they're going to build her up slowly. It was a more experienced opponent than the ones she's fought previously. So, and from what she mentioned in her post-fight interview, it looks like she's going to be back in September, I think, back in fighting in Australia again. So for championship rounds, potentially for some sort of a regional title, I think. So yeah, she's not going to have that much time to sort of get back into camp and sort of work on some new things. But yeah, she's not mucking around, and so far she's been successful. So good luck to her.
Yeah, no, hopefully she continues the way she's going. Obviously, we want to see her do well, but yeah, for sure want to see her make some adjustments at the same time.
Absolutely. Now we got to get into UFC 275, which is obviously on this weekend in Singapore. But before we do, during the week there's the Road to the UFC event, which is sort of going down also in Singapore. It's kind of I guess it's like a contender series type thing where the fighters are. Well, I guess there's going to be a tournament there where fighters are going to be sort of fighting for a UFC contract and whatnot. But we've got an Australian representing over there in a non-tournament bout. It's of course Eternal bantamweight champion, a former Eternal flyweight champion, Sean Etchell. We've touched on this one before. He's taking on Takeru Ishida. Who's a 19-year-old, sort of phenom from Japan. So yeah, what do you make of Sean Etchell and his matchup this week?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good matchup for him. Like, it's a very winnable fight for him. He's obviously more experienced. He's older. He's fighting obviously the dude's a sensation that he's fighting, and he's a bit of a phenom, like you said. But like we kind of spoke about, when we touched on this already, he's just a kid too. Like that, I think that's going to come into the other things are going to factor in. And Sean's pretty well rounded. Like he can do it all. And so yeah, it's a good matchup for Sean. And like you said, he's just flying to Singapore, so jet lag, all that sort of shit aren't going to be factors you kind of have to deal with too much. So it's all leading to what's going to be potentially a coming out party for Etchell to be able to sort of showcase why he deserves to fight in the UFC or wherever the case is. He can go out there and put on a show and represent Australia and, put the Japanese bloke in a lot of pain and a lot of hurt and hopefully put him away.
We know that Sean Etchell can do that too. He's not a guy who likes to muck around and play with his food. So, if he's going to be more sort of physically mature, you would think, than the opponent. So hopefully he can sort of impose that and put him away, impress the UFC brass, because it'd be great to have another Australian in the ranks.
Yeah, and Sean just comes forward. Like, he doesn't take a step back and doesn't sort of, like you said, he doesn't sort of wait and try and feel things out. Like, he just comes forward and tries to slice straight through you. So I feel like if he just does that and hopefully gets a finish, he's going to probably potentially be fighting in the UFC, and we're going to be hopefully talking about his debut in the organization before the year's out.
Absolutely, and for UFC 275, it was originally supposed to have Whittaker versus Vettori on the event, and it's been announced during the week that it's now official. It has been moved. The fight has been moved to UFC Paris, which is on September 4. It obviously got cancelled this time due to an injury to Rob Whittaker. So Rob Whittaker's got another date, and hopefully he can make it this time and do his work with Marvin Vettori.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that on episode 30 or some shit. I don't know, but we'll be there. We'll be talking about it. We'll be breaking it down.
We'll be there. We'll be getting balls deep as well. It'll be it'll be a good one. But also another cancellation from this weekend's card was Blood Diamond, who was supposed to be fighting Orion Kosi. Obviously, Blood Diamond sort of suffered an injury, so and one less sort of Anzac fighter on the card, unfortunately. But I don't know if you've sort of heard anything of Blood Diamond, but hopefully he's recovered soon and we can see him back in the cage.
Yeah, no, I didn't get really into too much detail about what injury he's got or what kind of happened, but yeah, obviously, I did speak to him about it because obviously it's shit that it got kind of scrapped. It's always shit when a fight gets scrapped or falls through or whatever. But hopefully he recovers fairly quickly. He can get back into training camp. They can maybe reschedule that fight or another fight or something. But like we kind of spoke about when the matchup was first sort of released, it would have been a sort of, on paper at least, would have been a sort of another rough matchup for him because obviously the guy's got strong wrestling and grappling pedigree. But yeah, maybe a bit of a blessing, more time for him to sort of work in those areas and strengthen those areas and then continue to chip away at his strengths that he already has and keep grinding that way. So hopefully he's back soon because, we want to see him kind of rebound from the debut that he had and, get a win and progress forward.
Absolutely, and yeah, for those who are fighting, we've got 4 Australians on the card, all of whom their first name starts with J, which was pointed out by Josh Coolabau when I interviewed him on the weekend. I actually hadn't even noticed that, but we've got Jake Matthews, Josh Coolabau, Jacob Malkoon, and Jack Della Maddalena on the card. So the 4 Js, as they're apparently calling themselves. So the first one on the card is Jake Matthews. He's taking on Andre Fialho, who's, I think he's coming off a loss at the moment, Fialho, but he's had he's had 2. I think it might be a couple of wins, but he's been impressive anyway. It looks a tricky matchup for Jake Matthews. He's kind of stepped in on shortish notice. So, what do you make of this matchup?
It's a rough matchup. Almost dangerous. You've seen him put hands on people. He can put them away, and he sort of looks like he packs a lot of power in his punches. Seems like it's shortish notice for Jake. I think he recently just had a baby too, so it's all happening for the guy. He's probably got a lot going on at the moment. So it's going to be a tough task to sort of go in and get in there and compete and do his thing against this dude. But obviously, his since he's gone to welterweight, outside of the Brady fight, he sort of looks a lot better at this weight class than he did when he was trying to fight at lightweight. Looks like he's filled out a bit more. Obviously, he's got really good grappling pedigree himself. The guy, he's not a slouch anywhere there. And I think you've seen, because he's filled out a bit more too, because he was a bit young when he first started fighting in the UFC. He's filled out a bit more. He's got a bit more size. He's become a bit more of a man. And, that's made a difference on the feet as well. He's packing a bit more power in his punches. And, he's training with some good dudes. He's got some really good coaches, experienced coaches and pioneers of the sport with him. So, for my money, he's going to have to sort of impose his will early in this fight. He's going to have to wear on his opponent a bit. Push him up against the fence. Just get the lactic building up in his arms and his legs, especially his arms. So you take away the pop off them punches, and then work from there. And then round 2 onwards, you can start opening up on the feet a bit more and entertaining those exchanges. But I feel like, especially with how it's sort of panned out and playing out the lead up to this fight, he's got to try and just wear on his opponent and try and look to find that route to victory and just grind him out.
Absolutely, and we don't really know when fights are taken on short notice, but I assume that he wouldn't have taken this fight if he wasn't sort of in at least reasonable sort of fight shape. So, hopefully he's got the sort of cardio to do that. We know that Jake's really good at sort of shutting down his opponent's strengths. He's got good movement, good hand speed, that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see if he can sort of shut Andre Fialho down, sort of shut down those dangerous weapons that he's got, and because we know that Jake he tends to win his fights on points, so it'll be interesting to see if he can sort of stay the distance and shut Fialho down.
And also, I hope that he was sort of training and he was already sort of in some sort of fight shape and preparing for something, expecting sort of something to come along, and it's not just like a case of I just need a fight and I just need a paycheck at the moment to sort of keep things over, especially with him sort of having a baby and all that sort of stuff. I hope that's not the motivation for taking the fight, and I hope it is that he's ready to go and he's in shape and he was preparing for something anyway, because then we can see him go out there, do well, hopefully get a finish or do something, and maybe then you get lucky, you get a bonus, and then you kind of pays off for you anyway.
Absolutely, and also on the card we've got Josh Coolabau, who's taking on Sung Woo Choi. I had the pleasure, like I mentioned, of interviewing Josh over the weekend, and that one's now out on the Fight News Australia YouTube channel. So check that one out for more info on this fight to get Josh's perspective. But we know that Choi is he's a tall, sort of rangy fighter. He's sort of a bit of a knockout artist. So what do you make of the this matchup for Kuya?
Yeah, it's obviously not an easy matchup. He's not going to they don't sort of tend to look after the Anzacs in any sort of way with the matchups that they give him. But it's a tough matchup, being that he is so tall and rangy and he's very aggressive on the feet. It's going to be interesting to sort of see how this plays out. But obviously Josh did say that this is a matchup that he thinks is very good for him and matches up well for him and is very winnable, and is kind of going to bring the best out of him, because it is a matchup that is so dangerous and the guy is going to just come from the bell and try and put him away. We're interesting to see how that sort of pans out. And for me, I just want to see Josh capitalize on the success that he has in there. Like in the Shah Ilan fight, there was a bunch of times where he would like crack him very, very hard, and he'd like land, but just didn't follow up, didn't look to find the, look to sort of get the stoppage victory. A few times where he sort of really hit him like really hard, and then would just kind of admire his work instead of sort of capitalizing on that. And I know from your chat with him, he kind of touched on that himself. He said, that he didn't want to go too crazy and just to have the style points and get a finish when, he just wanted to get that first UFC win after he got, obviously in his debut, you got Jalen Turner up in weight, short notice. It was a rough go of things. And then he fought Charles Jourdain and kind of got fucked over with a decision. So, it was a draw when it should have really went to him. And, not because he's one of my friends and like a training partner. I was sort of watching that fight objectively. He won the fight.
He looked good in that fight. He really did.
Yeah. And he dropped Charles. So, like, if it's a close fight, but one of you got dropped and one of you didn't, how does the guy that got dropped win the fight? Get a draw in the fight as opposed to a loss on his record. But, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Early on, he's going to have to be on point and, be controlling the range. And even if his goal isn't to sort of take the fight down to the mat and keep it there, he's going to have to mix in some level changes, mix in some clinching, just kind of mix it up completely, because this dude is obviously very tall, very long, likes to strike, very dangerous there. Seems like he packs some power because he's like put a few people away. So, hopefully it brings out the best Josh Culibao that, I've known that over the years that I've seen him put on some crazy performances and seen when he's been on point, he's been able to go out there and do some cool things. So I want to see him do that now and kind of really cement himself moving forward and make some sort of waves in the division.
Absolutely, we know that Choi's going to come straight at him, and he's going to have to probably weather the storm a little bit early. But like you sort of touched on there in our interview, he said in the Shah Yalan fight, he knew that Shah Yalan was a guy who was going to want to press him against the cage and kind of grind him out. So he had to sort of play it safe a little bit and sort of be on his bike. But he feels like this time he can really express himself a bit more because Choi's going to be available. He's going to be there. He's going to bring the fight to him, and he feels like he can sort of express himself a bit more. So, without giving away too much, I'll have to go and check out the interview for more on that. But also on the card, we've got Jacob Malkoon, who's taking on Brendan Allen. We know that Brendan Allen's a pretty tough matchup for anyone. He's probably a much avoided fighter at that sort of level of the UFC at the moment. He's a highly touted prospect, and he's a highly credentialed grappler as well. But Malkoon's a grappler himself, so it's going to be interesting to see how he can sort of match it with someone like Brendan Allen. And it's probably maybe a vote of confidence from the UFC to sort of that they would throw Malkoon someone like Brendan Allen. Either that, or they're just trying to throw another Anzac fighter under the bus. But what do you make of the matchup?
I think the matchup come together because there was Brendan Allen was, I think, initially going to fight Dricus Du Plessis, who's obviously based in South Africa, and then there was a few things that didn't work out. Then Dricus got another matchup, and that fell through, and so Allen was sort of just waiting in the wings, and then now he's got Malkoon, but the approach for this fight for Malkoon's got to have to be use his grappling to keep the fight standing for the first round, to try and just mix things up a bit, throw Brendan off his game a little bit, you get that confidence up of you being able to stuff some of his takedowns and dictate how the grappling takes place. And then after that, you can sort of press the action a bit, look to take him down, look to impose your will from the top position, where we've seen with Malkoon, when he does sort of get in those positions, he finds some success. Like his last fight, he obviously got pieced up a bit in the first round, and then, once he did get a hold of the guy and just pursued that line and just grinded him out, he kind of had a lot of success and was able to get the win. But this is a rough matchup in that sense, because obviously Allen he can grapple. They're both guys that prefer to grapple. He can grapple. It's going to just come down to who controls those exchanges and scrambles a bit more, who utilizes the opportunities when they have them a bit more, and who's gas tank and who's ability to deal with the lactic building up in their arms and legs and body when they are trying to control these positions, who can deal with that better. That's what it's going to come down to. It's just going to be a war of attrition, really, as opposed to sort of who can out-technique the other guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually wasn't aware of the Duplessis situation there. I didn't realise that Malkoon was sort of stepping in for that one. So I guess the Aussies are an easy one to call on for an event in Singapore. So maybe that's why obviously Jake Matthews and Jacob Malkoon have sort of been the first port of call for fighters that need an opponent.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's going to make it easy for them to do that, and then it's a pretty good situation for Malkoon, because if he wins this fight, it kind of separates him from a few of the other prospects and kind of puts him in a really good position moving forward. But we've spoken about it before. He's in a really tough division. There's no slouches moving forward. You start breaking into that top 10, you start breaking into that top 5. Like, man, there's some rough matchups there. There's some absolute monsters that you got to deal with. So, and who knows, man? We know, you could be like Malkoon's obviously someone who likes to grapple, and that's sort of his thing that he likes to do. You got someone like Hamzat who occasionally fights at middleweight, and you've seen these Anzac fighters get stitched up a bit with matchups. Like, fuck, man, that's not something that you want to see sort of happen to someone as they get momentum. And even then, if Jacob goes on a bit of a run and starts breaking into the top 10, top 5, you got like Uriah Hall, Chris Weidman, you got Sean Strickland, you got Calvin Gaslam, you've got Darren Till, Cannonier, Brunson, like just absolute monsters that are ahead. Not even bringing Adesanya into the picture yet. So if he can go on a run in this division and keep making these adjustments, getting better, and go on a run and get momentum, it's going to be, if he does get to the point where he's fighting for a title or something like that, your resume is going to look pretty damn good if you've done the work to get there, because that division's pretty stacked.
Absolutely, and I guess the Brendan Allen fight's high risk, high reward, which is just how the Anzac fighters seem to like it.
Yeah, 100%. So let's hope he can go out there and get the win. But I'm going to make a prediction. It's probably going to be a decision. Hopefully he can grind it out and get the win, because I don't see either guy being able to sort of finish each other in the grappling department. I feel like both guys will be able to sort of deal with things enough. Even if it's not going their way, I don't see them getting a finish.
Yeah, it's hard to see either guy getting tapped, really, isn't it? But and also on the card, the last Aussie on the card is Jack Della Maddalena, who's obviously got Ramazan Ameev this time around. So it's I guess it's another test for Jack. Ameev's he's 35 years old. He's a sambo stylist. So all of his fights, he's 5-2 in the UFC, and all of them have gone to decision. So he's obviously a grinder. He's a guy who likes to grind his opponents out, and obviously Jack Della. We know that he's well rounded. He's good everywhere, but it seems that his probably his path to victory in this one. I know you're the breakdown guy here, but look at me go, hey. But
just doing it, just killing it.
Look at me. Actually, you can log off. I'm done. I'll take it from here. Thanks, mate.
All right.
But yeah, but I mean, I guess Della's big advantage in this one is to look to keep the fight standing and sort of punish Ameev on the way in, I imagine. So what do you make of it?
Yeah, Jack Della, first round knockout. I think he's just going to piece the dude up. I think it's going to be very similar to his last fight. He's just going to be able to put hands on him and hurt him, because it's not even so much the power that he has in his hands or anything like that. It's just how accurate he is. Like, you can tell when he's throwing these punches, it's sort of, he has like a aim small, miss small type approach. Like, you can tell he's like aiming for specific areas on their face and jaw and stuff when he hits them, so that even if he doesn't quite land there, you're still landing somewhere that's doing damage. Like, if I'm aiming for your nose and I miss and I hit you in the cheek or the jawbone or something like that, that's still going to fucking hurt you and mess you up a bit. So he's so accurate. He's so accurate, so clean, so crisp, and his timing and distance is so filthy. So, I see that happening. I don't think Old Mate's going to have the opportunity to sort of get a hold of him and start grinding him out. I think he's going to eat some hands, eat some combinations, and get sat down and ultimately finished.
Yeah, he throws everything full pelt, doesn't he, Jack Della? So, like Ameev's going to have to... He's going to have to sort of push through the fire, isn't he, to sort of impose his will. But Jack Della, he's he's good in the scramble as well. So it's Ameev's going to have to really work to get him down and keep him down as well. Yeah,
it's going to be a hard task for him to do that. And obviously, even if he does, I feel like Jack's going to have the patience, have the experience, and have the knowledge to sort of work out of those positions. I mean, you got guys like Rod Costa that are trying to like jump on your back and control you and take you down and wear on you and try and choke you out. I'm sure you're going to be fine. You know, you got someone like that who's sort of in your corner and helping you out and in your like on the team.
Jack Becker.
Like Jack Becker, like world class guys in that area. You know, so I feel like he's going to be fine. He's going to be able to keep it standing and be able to do his best work and be able to put this guy away. First round stoppage, I don't see it going any other way.
Absolutely, and we got to get to a fan question, but before we do, can you give us a prediction? The main event, Jiri versus Glover Teixeira, and of course the co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko versus Tyler Santos.
Co-main Valentina by however the fuck she wants. I don't think she loses that belt anytime soon. I'm not going to even try and find areas or potential opportunities for where you can say, oh no, but this shit might be able to do this. The only thing we've seen in recent times where she looked sort of human was maybe she got taken down a couple of times a few fights ago, and and that was it. But other than that, she's just been able to just piece everyone up, and she's going to continue to do that. So I feel like Valentina's just going to go out there and do work. I'm going to say it's going to be a third round stoppage, third round TKO. But she's shown she can wrestle and dominate on the ground as well, and kind of just work those positions as well. So she could very well do that, but I feel like she's going to win. It'll be a TKO for her in the third round, and then the main event. I am never, ever, ever, ever after seeing what Glover's been able to do. I'm not picking against that dude. Like I know Yuri's dangerous. He's unorthodox. He comes forward. He's very, very wild. Got power. He's just a crazy dude. But I ain't picking against Glover, man. I feel like Glover's going to submit this dude in round 2. He's gonna survive the storm in round 1. He's going to get a hold of him in round 2, and he's going to choke him the fuck out.
Yeah, I bet against Glover the last couple of fights, possibly even more than that. Like he just seemed like this guy who was just, it was ready to, it was time to put him out to pasture, but he just keeps finding a way, doesn't he? He just keeps, like you say, weathering the storm early on, and then in the later rounds, he just comes alive and he just puts guys away. So, it's tough to bet against him.
Anyone that can survive legendary Polish power and then come and put him away like that, I feel like there are some matchups for him in light heavyweight where it would be a bit more of a sort of tough task for him. But Yuri being where he's at, look, I know the dude's obviously very, very good. He's very, very talented. I like watching him fight. He's very violent, and stuff like that. But also, Glover's been there. He's experienced. He's been in these 5-round fights. He's been in these championship fights before. He's shared the cage with like the who's who in that division. He's weathered the storm. He's fought some guys that hit hard and like pack some punches. Like he's fought Santos. He's fought, Gustafsson. He's fought Jan Blachowicz. These sort of guys. So I just see Glover being able to impose his will, submitting Yuri and riding off into the sunset.
Absolutely. You reckon he's gonna hang up the gloves, or?
I think he said, he'll do this one, and I saw some few things of him doing that, saying that, he'll do this one, defend the belt, beat someone like Yuri, and then maybe have one more if it's Jan. Like if Jan, because Jan obviously had to win his last fight, so I think he said he'll do like
they made
Yuri
a deal on social media, didn't they?
Yeah, Yuri, and then have a fight with Jan and then ride off. But I wouldn't be surprised if even after this fight he just goes, "Oh fuck it, I'm done."
And he's earned that. Like, he's the UFC light heavyweight champion at 42 years old. But, every time he wins, it's just kind of, it enables all those sort of older fighters who are just sort of still holding on too long. I feel like every time, every sort of George Foreman or Glover Teixeira or, someone like that, there's another 100 or 1,000 sort of older blokes who just get bashed unnecessarily in their, in their twilight years.
And for Glover too, like it's kind of cool because he's not only is he like he's 42, which is like, I mean, as a person, not old, but for fighting, very, very old. But he's also like one of the last specialists that's around. You know what I mean? Like it's no secret that Glover's going to take you down. He's going to wear on you. He's going to beat you up. And then if you give him the opportunity and the doorway's there, he's going to submit you and put you away. I mean, one of my favorite fights that I've sort of watched from him that kind of highlights that and just, how much of a specialist he is like the fight with Anthony Smith. Like he punched his teeth out of his face and then just kept going, kept wearing on. Too. Yeah. So, but it's like, it's no secret that like once Glover gets a hold of you, you're pretty well fucked unless you're like Daniel Cormier or John Jones.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, good luck to him. You know, it's gonna be a fun watch. The kind of I don't know, it's hard not to root for someone like that. He's such a nice guy, and he's sort of setting records and things like that. So yeah, hopefully he gets it done.
Real quick, I think that Zhang Wei Li is going to knock Ioane Jędrzejczyk the fuck out.
It's not a bad shout either. Yeah, like that was obviously an incredible fight the first time around. So like it's probably never going to live up to the first fight, really, is it? Like they rarely do these rematches, but obviously people tune in to watch them after such a barn burner the first time around. But yeah, look, if they try and sort of fight the same way they did last time, then if one of them, if someone's going to get put away, it's probably going to be Joanna, right?
100%, yeah, 100%.
There you go. So put that one on record. So there you go. You've got a three-leg multi there from courtesy of Lockjaw Justin Van Heerden. So sound off in the comments if it doesn't get up.
Yeah, no. Let me know if it doesn't work out. But if it does, I'm not going to take a lot, but I'll take 5%.
5%. There you go. That's a tax. That's generous. That's a generous offer. So to our Fight Talk Down Under listeners, you're welcome. But speaking of Fight Talk Down Under listeners, we've got a question from one of our listeners. This week's question is from Nathan Smart. He asks, which MMA prospect has proven to be the biggest letdown? Who have you got?
Look, I've been thinking about this because there's a bunch you could go, like if we're talking like all the way to the UFC and shit like that. But I'm gonna go with Chelsea Hackett for mine. And like not from speaking from a place of any like ill will or anything like that. I mean, I know she's not my biggest fan, but the way it kind of panned out, she went on a bit of a run locally, obviously, and there was sort of hyped up a bit more than what she needed to be. Was kind of rushed through it a little bit, which isn't uncommon because the talent pool is smaller in the women's divisions, and we saw her have a Contender Series debut and go out there and get absolutely outclassed by someone who went on to fight in the UFC and didn't have much success in Valerie, fucking Canadian chick, I forget her name, but I think you might be right. But anyway, this chick ended up fighting in the UFC now, and she just hasn't had much success. So, it's pretty rough when the president of the company says that your skills in an area are just completely non-existent. That's pretty rough. So, obviously she had so much hype coming in. They built her up to be this like absolute gun, which in some areas she is. She's obviously a very credentialed like martial artist, and when it comes to the stand-up side of things. But for my money, I just feel like she was this hype prospect who was. They made it seem like she was going to go out there and absolutely just kill it and just be the next big force in the UFC. And I saw some stuff in the lead up to that fight, which I was kind of like, man, this girl is just not like she's obviously surrounded by too many yes men, and then she's she's looking past something when she's looking past this fight. She's already like. Looked like she would put up fights, like she'd be on her social media and she'd put up fights that are happening, like flyweight fights in the UFC where these women are fighting in the UFC, and she'd be like putting them on her social, and she'd be saying shit like, I can't wait to get in there to give Valentina some real competition. These girls suck, blah, 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 blah. Like about people who are already fighting in the division. So I feel like even she started to believe all the shit that the people were saying, and kind of built herself up more than what she did, because when the fight on Contender Series then rolled around, like the grappling, the wrestling, all that shit was just non-existent, and you got your head punched in front of lots of people. So, I did see something that she's potentially going to be cleared soon to get back into training camps and be able to fight again. So, credit to her if that's what she's going to be doing, and hopefully she can go on a bit of a run and kind of eventually redeem herself. But I just hope that she approaches it the right way this time. Respects the game, respects herself enough to not listen to just people, tooting her horn and building her up too much, and actually, does find the success that she could potentially have. Because, there was a few things that took away from that. She was this highly touted prospect, made out like she was going to go and kill her, but then avoided fighting like the actual people, even on a regional level before she got the Contender Series call up. Like, she didn't fight Casey. She turned that fight down. And look at Casey now. Casey was fighting at strawweight at the time, in the regional sense. She's since then fought in the UFC. She's absolutely killed it. She's fighting at flyweight. And, you know, for my money, if that fight ever came to fruition back then, and especially now, Casey would just beat the shit out of her. So, yeah, that's my sort of pick for my prospect.
There you go. Yeah, I was going to ask if Chelsea was still around. I hadn't really heard that name in a little while, but if I'm not wrong, she might still be in her early 20s, right? I think there's probably
she's super young.
Still time.
Plenty of time. Just just got to do it the right way.
Yeah, just a bit of a fizzer on the Contender Series there, but yeah, I don't really have anyone from the local scene. I didn't really have an Australian up my sleeve, but obviously there's been numerous numerous examples in the UFC. Like some of my favourite ones. Obviously, Sage Northcutt was one. He sort of came into the UFC. He was sort of looked like a bloody, some sort of a statue, sort of chiseled out of stone, but ended up sort of not quite being up to it. But probably a lesser known one was Felipe Nova. If you remember him from The Ultimate Fighter, Dana White said he looked like he was going to be the next GSP, I think, or something like that. And you just have to look up his career and see that it ended up being sort of fairly underwhelming in the end. Kevin Lee was probably another one. He sort of came through and. He looked like he was on his way to the title. And look, he fought for a title as well. So, like, I don't think it was that big of a failure. But I'm one for the old school, right? I love the, we've talked about sort of Tito and Ken Shamrock, right? But there's a couple of sort of earlier examples where Chet Congo is one of my favourite examples. I remember when the UFC signed him. It must have been 20 years ago now. He looked unbeatable, this guy, this African guy, a guy of sort of, obviously African heritage. He's French, but, he just looked like this physical specimen, and he just knocked out a couple of bums early on in his career. And everyone just thought, like, how the hell is anyone going to beat this guy? And then it sort of turned out he couldn't grapple in the end. And, he's 47 years old and still chasing that elusive title in Bellator. But, that was a bit of a letdown in the end. But, my favourite example, actually, and this is one that always the first one that comes to my mind when people ask about sort of underwhelming prospects is Brandon Vera. He came into the UFC. It's probably a similar era to Chet Congo. Actually, it might have been maybe a little bit after Chet Congo started, if I'm not mistaken. But I remember he reeled off like 4 or 5 wins early in his career, and everyone just thought, like, this guy is unbelievable. He can strike, he was knocking people out with head kicks, he was tapping guys on the ground. And back in those days, like, people couldn't do both. Like, there was specialists, there were strikers and grapplers. There was very few guys that could just do everything. And Brandon Vera just seemed to have it all. He had he had every tool in the bag, and then it just, he got beaten. I can't remember who he got beaten by in the end. I think it might have been Tim Sylvia might have knocked him out, perhaps. Yeah. So it was someone kind of underwhelming like that anyway. And, the sort of hype train got derailed. I think he had a couple of losses, and then he sort of ended up just, he ended up being inactive. He ended up having some injuries, and he found some success later in his career in one championship. But he was expected to sort of go on to big things in the UFC, and it certainly didn't end up being the case. He had some pretty underwhelming losses. So there you go. That's a bit of a list. But Brandon Vera is probably my favourite one. Go to,
yeah. I mean, another one currently that sort of sticks out a little bit is Hernandez. But he's not really he's another one. He's just kind of not really hitting the mark. Like, he came into the UFC and he was absolute gun, and then was like talking all sorts of shit to Cowboy, and then got fucking starched by Cowboy. And then ever since then, it's kind of just, he's just not really found the mark, been able to find his feet, really. I do think he's coming off a win in his last one, but still not really like performing to the standard that he should be and that they were sort of making him out to be.
Absolutely. I mean, there's levels to the game. There are guys that come in and girls that come in all the time, and they look like they've got all the they've got the goods, and then eventually they find someone who's their match, someone who can you get to the upper echelon of the UFC, and everyone can grapple, everyone can strike. It's those 1%, the 1%ers that really separate the the good from the great. So a lot of the time they get found out at that level.
Yeah, no, I think that's going to continue to happen. It's just one of those things that's part of the sport.
Absolutely. And another thing that's going to continue to happen is Fight Talk Down Under. We'll be back next week with episode 19, where we're going to recap UFC 275. We'll recap Sean Etchell's fight at Road to UFC. We'll be previewing Rob Wilkinson, who's going to be back in action in the PFL as well, so we'll be all over that. We'll have another fan question and all the usual sort of fun and frivolity. And until then, send us through your fan questions. The details are below if you're watching on YouTube. If not, it's at Dan Meehan MMA on Twitter or at Lockjaw MMA on Instagram. Until then, also like and subscribe. YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Podbean, and Fight News Australia. And I also do have to mention, I say this every week, but we're going to be finalising our sponsorship drive shortly. So if anyone's interested, we've got a good platform here. We're off to a pretty good start. So let us know if you want a bit of extra exposure and you want to support the podcast. So Lockjaw, what have you got for us?
Ooh, I've been sort of thinking about this, but real quick, let's pray someone. Aljamain Sterling. You talking about coming up in weight and fighting my teammate is the biggest joke I've heard in recent times. You got pieced up by a couple of people, and then Jan made you do the chicken dance a couple of times. You turned your back and ran away from him at one stage of the fight because he hit you with some clean punches. If you think you're going to vacate the bantamweight belt so your teammate could fight for it and then come up in weight to try and fight Volko, mate, you are going to get knocked the fuck out. I don't think you understand the difference in skill, the difference in size, the difference in power. It's not. Nah. If you're talking about moving down in weight, it might be a bit different. And if you do it healthy and you can get down in weight, but where you're the bigger man coming down, but no way. No way, sir, are you going to have any chance of beating Volko. I don't even like Volk that much, and I don't think you're going to beat him. No way. I mean, I'm kidding. Obviously, love the bloke, but yeah, nah. Aljamain Sterling, Gronk of the week.
I gotta watch it. You never know what might stop you. Here I am, climbing up.